welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton, and today we're going to talk about the military child. And you might stop and say, wait, children aren't in the military, it's their parents. But it affects the child, it affects the whole family as well, with some special challenges as well as some amazing opportunities. So here to talk about that are two folks. We have Sergeant Craig Havelis from Langley Air Force Base and Carol Berg, who's with the state. Is this a real issue? How are children really that affected by their parents' service?
I think absolutely is an issue. When we take a look at what our military children engage in, just because of their affiliation with the military, it's not only a great opportunity for them in a lot of different ways, but it does bring its own challenges. Opportunities to meet different cultures, to learn different languages, to travel around the world, their ability to just become instilled with that sense of patriotism, honor, and sacrifice really creates a great opportunity for them. But they do face challenges when their family members deploy, or sometimes we have dual veteran families where the husband and the wife are both in the military.
A new challenge.
Exactly. So there are a lot of things that they face, and I know Airmen and Family Readiness Center and Craig's group over at Langley Air Force Base in Fort Eustis, they provide a lot of resources that help to meet some of those challenges.
Yes, without a doubt. Some of the resources that we're able to provide, every month we have what's known as our monthly Hearts of Parts events. So for families that are dealing with deployments, the children and their families are able to get out, participate in a fun, inclusive environment, and relate to maybe other children that are dealing with some of the same issues that they are. So they're able to see that, hey, they're not the only ones going through this, and they're able to relate to other people that are in their same situation.
And I think, as you said, there's some real opportunities. So when a service member gets deployed somewhere that he or she can bring the family, you're exposed to a year in Germany, for example.
Right.
I have a niece-in-law who learned to speak German at about age 4. I mean, she just picked it up because they were living there, and there are some wonderful things. But what a lot of our service members face these days are the solo deployments, where they're gone from their family for a fairly hefty length of time. I know it's different in the Navy than it is in the Air Force and Army. What would you say is a fairly common deployment now?
For us, right now in the Air Force, we're dealing with mostly 6-month deployments, give or take. There's a variety of different things, though. It's not just about deployments. We also have service members that are serving in one-year assignments, let's say on a remote tour.
Or a place that's not hospitable
to take your family.
Kids, yeah.
Exactly. So the families are sort of left here to sort of wait and go through that process by themselves. But again, our services that we provide here and within the local community are to sort of help them connect with our community and connect with our military family and friends as well. So
I would think that connection is what people who are temporarily single parents would need in order to make it. I mean, anyone who's a single parent or even a young family who doesn't have local resources. A lot of people have grandparents, aunts, uncles that they can really rely on. And if you're new to the community, making those connections, finding your neighbors, finding the friends of your kids and play groups and connection, it's got to be a little bit bigger challenge.
It is a challenge, and I think I was an Army spouse for 20 years, and we moved 9 times in 16 years. So every couple of years, my children had to meet new friends, start with a new school, all new activities within the community. The base environment and the posts that we were affiliated with was that connection that they had with their extended family. So we had families from all around the world that were making contact with our family no matter where we were, whether we were in Okinawa, Japan, Leavenworth, Kansas, wherever. So you create that extended family, and organizations like Airmen and Family Readiness bring all of those resources together so that they have that connection and they have the opportunity to make that familial relationship as they move.
Well, also, there's electronic opportunities that weren't available to, even one generation ago. And I'm sure it depends on the deployment and the circumstances and where people are, but you can sometimes Skype with your kids now. You can email. You can keep a little bit more of a connection than, the days when people had to write letters and some of it was blacked out and censored because you couldn't give up your location.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The different ways to communicate with the age of the internet has really given the capability to communicate with your family over long distances in ways we've never seen before. So it does help in that aspect to be able to reconnect with your family. But you're right, because the mission tends to dictate, depending on where you are, how often you're able to communicate, and how well you're able to communicate. And sometimes that can be more frustrating than actually having a service member who can't communicate as often.
Oh, because now, people demand it. People
Yep,
expect
exactly.
instant, constant communication, and someone who's deployed isn't able to meet that.
But what that also means is that this increase in communication also increases the opportunity for children and younger children to hear more, experience more of that separation, and that tends to create some behavioral health issues at times because they're more aware of the dangerous situation that their parents may be in. They may be more aware of the war or what's going on, and that creates that opportunity for them to internalize more crisis and fear for them at times. So connecting them, being able to provide behavioral health resources like our agency does to help them remain stabilized is a great opportunity for that family.
I hadn't thought about that because, when there was a break and Daddy, because it used to be Daddy almost all the time, was gone for a while, you dealt with it, and then he came back and life changed again. But now it is constantly, if you're Skyping, you're seeing a background, you're reminded of that military setting, you're hearing the news, Iraq is in the news, almost every day. That is a heightened fear for kids. Kids today are fearful anyway. They live in a much more dangerous world than the one I grew up in.
My husband was deployed to Desert Storm a few years back, and my children were able to have some contact with him. And I remember very clearly one incident where they were hearing what were actually Scud missiles in the background, and they thought it was fireworks. So that opportunity, we didn't have the Skyping back then, but now it's not at all unusual to hear a Skype where something is inbound and that child hears that.
So what do you do? What do you tell a kid? How do you help them through that? I mean, it's not false anxiety, it's real.
You're 100% right. It is a real anxiety for these children, and it's something that they're trying to get used to. And because we have services available on base through our behavioral health flight, through several different resources that we have on base, we try to educate our families during the deployment cycle on what's available to them to deal with that. One of the things that children tend to do in these situations is they may revert back to old behaviors. If they were maybe thumbsuckers or if they wet the bed, you may see older children now revert back to those behaviors because of the circumstances that they're in. So we have resources and people that are available to deal with those specific issues specifically, and then we try to educate our families that are dealing with that on where to get that help from. And so that's sort of where we get involved with those families.
Do people feel comfortable asking for help? I mean, the old image of the military, and maybe the one you were in, was you tough it out. The spouses toughed it out, and they toughed it out together, and they dealt with stuff. And I think asking for help wasn't encouraged, and I think it is now. But I don't know if people make the transition as easily as the culture does.
I think that we're very fortunate that our military children are very resilient. And the military children tend to gravitate toward each other, and there's a really strong support within them, within their own culture as a military child. I think our military spouses or those that are left behind are not as active as maybe they were years ago because more spouses now work or are forced to work.
Yeah, a lot of them have jobs.
But the military community is inherently very tight, and there's always support back there from other families, whether your neighbor is deployed, their spouse is deployed or not deployed. There's that connection that provides that level of support, and the children maintain it themselves, even through school, through activities, through events on the bases, on the post. It's a great opportunity for them to make that connection that they'll have for the rest of their lives.
Exactly, and I think you touched on it earlier when you talked about the nucleus that we have in our military community, because it's not just the immediate family anymore, it is the extended family, and that relates directly back to your unit organization and then to your community within your specific area you live in. The Hampton Roads area is phenomenal when it comes to the support of the military families. And because we're integrated throughout all communities, everybody has been so helpful to a lot of our families that are dealing with these deployments because they understand some of the things that they're going through. So definitely a big help for us.
Well, are there tips like, tell your child's teacher. Use the resources in the broader community, not just those on base, because teachers are very sensitive to what kids are going through. And if you feel comfortable telling other parents or, creating that backup system, especially if you live off base in one of our neighborhoods.
Yeah, actually, the military provides what's called a school liaison officer, and they are the direct liaison between the military community and the schools themselves. So when a military member leaves the area, we ask that the families inform the schools and the guidance counselor so they can be aware of maybe some behaviors that are not necessarily common to the specific child. But if the school is aware that the military member or both military members are out of the home, then they can sit there and say, okay, we'll adjust on what needs to happen, and we'll watch out for the child and say, you know what, these behaviors aren't normal. Let's bring some folks in and have a conversation, and then work with the school liaison officers as well to communicate back to the military community.
I think that's helpful, and I know I was a former scout leader, and you kind of watch out for your den, and there were some military folks in there, and you just kind of, there's communities all over the place, but you have to be willing to let them know, to use the support that people want to give, because I think, even in the broader community, people want to help. They may not know how, they may not know what the problem is, or maybe it's not a problem, it's just something you're going through. It's the same, not the same, but anytime a family needs additional resources or a little backup, people I think want to be there and don't always know how to.
The biggest thing that I try to encourage people that move in and out of an area is to connect as quickly as possible when you transition. So when they come to a new location, make your connections on base or on post. Engage your children in activities, get them involved in the same types of activities that they've been doing. Because allowing a child just to sit at home, not being able to make friends, not being able to engage and to get themselves familiar, it creates a hole in their environment. And it's all too quickly that family is uprooted and moved again. So keeping their routine as routine as possible, keeping them engaged, keeping them involved is not only great for the children, but provides that stability and that level of separation for the family so that the parents are not spending all of their time trying to entertain their children. They're able to handle the move, and the kids are able to handle their reassignment.
Well, a lot of reassignments now are in the summer, which is good because it doesn't disrupt the school year, but it also leaves kids for a couple of months without the connection of school, without knowing other kids their age. So how do you get them out?
Well, you make a great point. And one of the things, whenever you relocate, and we talked a little bit about extended family, if you've PCS several times before, a lot of times you may actually have friends or family in that local community that is already stationed there. So you're able to reach out and work that. We have sponsors that are identified when the military member comes or is going to be stationed at a particular unit, and those people are really involved in trying to get them as settled as possible, answer any questions. But the biggest key really is getting your child involved in the move itself. If you're able to allow them to have a piece of the move and say, hey, these are some things that are in the local community, what are you interested in doing? Maybe you didn't have that. Maybe you came from an area that didn't have a large summertime because maybe you were in Alaska or Montana, right? And so the weather was completely different. And now there are opportunities here in Virginia they never had before, so maybe there's a new interest involved. So having them involved in that process is a big thing, and then looking forward to that. And like we talked about with the age of the internet, there are so many resources available online, one of which is to call our office and find out what is available in the community, because one of our biggest selling points for the airman family is information referral. That's one of our biggest priorities. So if we don't have a specific service, we will tell you where you can find it.
And we've always engaged our children. They were always competitive gymnasts. So we put some of the responsibility on them to do some investigating so that when they knew we were going to move to a new permanent change of station, they were already looking into gymnastics programs that they could get involved in and they could visit once they got here. So I think you're absolutely right. And getting them engaged and making them to feel as if they're part of that move helps them feel more comfortable once they actually do relocate.
Well, it makes perfect sense. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, that's the right way to engage any child, is to give them a piece of the responsibility so they don't feel out of control, so they don't feel like things are happening to them, but they are helping those things happen. It makes a ton of sense. But it may not always come to your mind when you're in the middle of something that's a difficult transition.
But you also have to remember that there are a lot of situations where children do not actively engage right away. And sometimes that creates the reversing behaviors and going back to things that are not positive for them. So it's the engagement and the activity that I think is important, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that not every child engages as quickly as we would like. So sometimes there's that extra push, or sometimes, we're going to see our children struggle.
I would think so. You certainly have your introverts, and then I think you also have, puberty messes up every kid for a while, and people can become introverted and sullen even when it's not their natural personality.
Exactly. Well, moving is one of the most difficult things to do. It is very traumatic.
I was not military, and I went to 3 different high schools in 4 years, so I understand that transition. Okay, before we close, because I don't want to leave this as, military children need extra support and have problems.
Absolutely.
What are some of the great things that military children get out of the experience?
I would say the top 3 things that I see is the opportunity to experience different cultures, different groups of individuals, to meet different people. I think the second thing is the opportunity to instill in their families and themselves that sense of patriotism, honor, and sacrifice, because my experience with a lot of kids is the third thing is their ability to engage in the community, to feel as if they want to give to the community, and to be part of that community for as long as they are there. So I think there are a lot of positive opportunities that they gain from their military child lifestyle.
I think so. I think one of the things that's been said about not just the current millennials, but the Generation X and Y ahead of them, is that they're me people, that they're very self-focused. And with military kids or people who are in that military culture, it's very much not just me. It's about the community. It's about what I do. It's about making this a safer, better place.
Right.
Do you have anything to add to that you see?
Of course, yeah. I agree with everything that you said, without a doubt. And one thing I will say is, because they tend to move around, I think military children become more willing to accept others very quickly, because they understand that when you move into a new area, that you know what, this person may need a friend, and I've been there before, so let me be accepting to them, and let me include them into my community, and then they make new friends that way, and then it settles them down so much more quickly, because now that family nucleus has become larger and more strong, and it allows the entire family to settle much quicker.
I think so. And the other thing I would say is they are resilient and adaptable and accepting of change.
Yes.
A lot of kids who grow up in the same community, the same kids on their street, are completely thrown when they get to college, or if they do have a move, or if they're, if something happens within their family, because they're not used to it. And I think military kids develop more strength of self and character and learn to roll. And that's an important skill in today's world.
Very, very much so. And you're right. It is an important skill, because they become more diverse. They're able to interact with different communities because they've been able to move around so much. They understand different environments, I think, a little bit more quickly than maybe some children that don't get to move around as much.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. I could keep talking about this all day, but I think we have to close. It's a wonderful topic. Thank you so much for shining this spotlight for us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for watching, and I do hope during April, which is the month of the military child, you will think about and talk to some of the military families in our community on your street, and thank them for what they do, and check in with them periodically to see how we can help support them for all the support they do for us. Thanks for watching.